Welcome, Akasha, to the Joe Butler Experience, to the very first episode of the Golden Thread of Goddesses series. And you are my goddess number one, Akasha.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for, seeing me and the invite and all of it. Thank you so much.
Well, yeah, I wanna just jump right in and I want to say a little bit about this series because it is the first one, and I have not yet had the opportunity to do a podcast alone, which I do plan on doing. But I will say that this series is about the goddess. And now that the planet is diving in or rising up, it's all the same, into the divine feminine spirit. So the divine feminine spirit is encapsulating the consciousness of planet Earth right now. And she is doing her best to transmute all the density into the flow. And so because she is doing this, all the goddesses of all time, both figuratively and literally, are coming to the forefront to assist us in sisterhood to be living through the golden thread of our purpose. And this
Yeah.
has become abundantly clear to me. I have had many messages. Three goddesses have come to me in the last 3 months. I have had Athena come through, and she's assisted me in painting a beautiful owl painting. And she has given me so much wisdom and so much understanding of what she did. And then there is two other goddesses, Venus, which is a planet that I actually have so much in my astrology, and Venus is a part of my lineage. I know for sure she's a part of my lineage. And then Isis is the third one, and she is such a divine, people don't understand how much of a divine mother she was. People see her as a magician, which she definitely was. She definitely was a divine goddess magician in the flesh. And but she also was the embodiment of mother. So
Mm.
she had the nurturing and healing modalities on full board, full spectrum in her realms and her realities. And she even brought her husband back to life for a short time with her abilities. So she was completely tapped in and tapped on. And we're going to come back to you now. We're going to throw the spotlight onto you.
Oh
And
boy.
the reason the reason why I wanted you to be part of this series is I feel you have such a full embodiment of what the modern day goddess is. And although you are stunningly beautiful, you are you have so many facets and layers, and you've gone through such a complicated story to get to this inner and outer beauty that you wear. And part of your journey and part of your golden thread, which is absolutely captivating to me, is you hold such a divine space for plant medicine. You have had
Mm.
such a journey with plant medicine and holding ceremony and holding space for Mother Gaia and her and all of her, her glory. So I want to like throw over the mic to you and give you some space to talk a little bit about your journey in
Yeah.
your past that led you to where you are now. And then if you can dive a little bit into your plant medicine journey as well, so we can have the space of that golden thread, because that is definitely one of your purposes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I would love to talk about it. I guess just starting from the very beginning of just, my childhood was a little rough, and then going into my teenage years, being heavily involved in drugs and alcohol. And, there's like a lot that comes with that. There was a lot of like emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, particularly from the men that I had in my life at the time. Dating somebody I think my first relationship, he was 27 and I was about 16. So, I
Wow.
mean, you can do the math there.
Yeah.
Um, it was a really, I think, like pivotal point in my life of maybe kind of like an initiation in a sense of like being the catalyst for how I was going to be spending my next 10 to 15 years of soul searching. And the things that I went through with him, he, not only was he older, but he was also a heroin addict and a registered sex offender. So to
Wow.
be exposed to that kind of relationship at such a important age of being, 16 years old, it's like everything kind of changed for me. And so I had left home at a young age. I think I was like 16 or 17. I had dropped out of high school. Um, going through all of that, got more into drugs, continued to see men that were maybe not the best, and kind of just in that atmosphere of partying all the time, not necessarily stable, not thinking about my well-being. Um, Shortly after that, in my like early 20s, I started dancing, exotic dancing. And that was another very pivotal moment of my life of being in these, like atmospheres, so to say, like this frequency of just the worst of the worst.
You went into a shadow dive. You went into a deep shadow dive and you needed to learn and experience what that vibration felt. So you could actually then have the contrasting go up to to the sky.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. It was interesting because I look back now and it makes sense, but at the time it was just like the most chaotic, maybe adrenaline filled experiences of my life. And again, also with like continued sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. Um, so I had difficulties with men for most of my life. I spent a really long time not, you know, necessarily having respect for them, but also hating them in a way. And so, I went throughout my 20s doing that. And I finally got to the point where I was feeling called to leave that part of my past behind. At that point, it was like I kind of hit this breaking point. I had gotten involved with men that were gang members and cartel members. And so I feel like that was the point where I had like a really big decision to make. I was either going to commit fully to this dark, chaotic, dangerous lifestyle, or I was going to choose something different. And I didn't know what different was. It was my whole life of just chaotic, dangerous situations that I would continuously be put in. So that's about the time when I was very, very suicidal. I was doing a lot of drugs, and I had found, well, I say that it had found me, but combo had come through, and I was kind of researching a little bit on, the medicinal properties and how it helps with addictions and like the peptides in it and all of that. And so I had found a practitioner, and I actually never ended up sitting with combo right away. I actually missed the first meeting that I was supposed to go to, the first ceremony, because I was too hungover.
Oh, wow.
So so it was tough to kind of get into the plant medicine world. This was during 2020, so we were right in the midst of COVID, and I thought the world is ending. Like, why am I here? And I got an invite to sit with grandmother medicine, which is ayahuasca. And I remember thinking, you know, I'm going to take my last bit of money that I had. I mean, it was all the money that I had in the bank. It was like $500 to my name. And I was like, it's like a do or die, because at that point I was so suicidal that I knew that if this didn't help me or work, that I just wanted to kill myself. And I went into that ceremony thinking in that way of like, I really hope this works. And it did. It did. I sat in ceremony 2 nights and had probably the biggest ego death of my life. So in a way, I did die. That second night, it was a very difficult ceremony to sit in, but that was
So
kind of the start.
let's dive, if you don't mind, a couple of things. Number one, I want to say that what comes through for me and what you just said is that the Divine Mother through the plant was coming to you to pull you to that balance point, so you could then be strong enough to know that you wanted to make that decision to be in your divine flow. And I'd like to hear, you said that that second night was really transformative for you. First of all, if you could tell people a little bit about ayahuasca. I know that pretty much everyone on the planet at this point, almost everyone, knows about what ayahuasca is, but if you could just give like a very brief, introduction to what it is to sit with her and what you
Mhm.
actually do, and then can you just pivot on to that second night and what happened, like some details of that story.
Yeah, yeah. So ayahuasca, she's a beautiful, beautiful plant. We call her grandmother. Very, very much motherly grandmother type of energy. But I kind of like to call her like the strict grandmother, where she will have no problem being stern with you and essentially putting you in your place if needed, but also like, she has a very gentle side too. So it's interesting to see that duality sometimes. She's a plant from the Amazon. There's a couple different lineages that work with her. And nowadays it's like it's all over the place. I mean, she can be all over the place all at once. So it's been really beautiful to see her grow in that way and to come to the US from the Amazon, to help so many different people. And so she's a brew. And the second night, I think what was most profound for me, um, how do I say this? So I was served a lot of medicine the second night, in this ceremony, perhaps what some people would call overserved. But now looking back, I feel like that was kind of part of my path and is included for a reason, so that
Right.
I could see the depths of how deep this medicine can actually go. And I just remember, taking the cups, and um, it got really intense where I felt it within the first 5 minutes. I felt her come into my body and, seeing
Is that
different kinds
is that
of,
normal? Is that normal to feel it that fast?
I would say, so it's difficult to say what's normal, right? Because especially with ayahuasca, it's every sit is different, every person is different. And so it's hard to use kind of like that spectrum of something that's normal, but at the time it didn't feel normal. And I think that that was part of what scared me, because everybody else in the room was still in their very much, meditative state in the beginning. I don't think we even had, um, the server like singing music at that point. We had just drank the medicine. And so it went from 0 to 100. I saw some cool patterns, and I remember opening my eyes because it got so intense. And I was like, I need a minute. Let me open my eyes, get out of that frequency. And I opened my eyes, and the entire room turned into this mountain. And I was on top of this mountain, who knows where, with the Incas. There was a bunch of Incas around me. And there's just this beautiful, beautiful light in front of me that it was like sitting on the sun. And I freaked out. It was
Wow.
beautiful, but I was so scared. I was so scared. And so that, led me kind of into this panic attack state, and I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't tell the facilitators that I couldn't breathe. And I ran out of the room. And I just remember thinking that there was like this kind of umbilical cord, and the umbilical cord had been cut. And, not to go into too many details about that experience, but I spent the rest of the ceremony in the bathroom in this very deep state of my soul separating from my body. And it was probably the scariest experience I've had in my life of thinking that I was going to die and I wasn't going to come back. And just physically being able to see my body laying on the floor and my soul outside of it. But it was the first time in my life that I recognized that, of having a soul and then a human body and being able to physically see that difference. It was like a huge breakthrough for me.
Wow. So you had an out of body experience, and I guess what I would ask you is like before you drank Aya, um you what was your understanding of what potentially could happen, or what did you think, what were your feelings about it before you sat? Did you
Mm.
have did you were you educated to understand what could happen, or did you just kind of open yourself to whatever, whatever was gonna be? Like, I just what was your education on that, in the sense of what it was compared to what you thought it would be, I guess, is what I'm getting to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I had been, obviously involved in drugs and alcohol since I was 15 years old. So at this point, I had maybe 13 years of um, dealing with psychedelics, we'll say, on top of the drugs, but also, using mushrooms, and a lot of acid, especially in my early 20s. So I feel like I was pretty well versed in psychedelics and, what could happen. I don't feel like I was going into it kind of like this like new type of thing. I felt pretty prepared just from having all of these many years of sitting with mushrooms and having we'll call it like a bad trip, right? I've had many bad trips in my life up until that point, and uh, that experience was different. It was very different. So I feel like I was educated in a sense, but I think whenever you're kind of meeting a plant that's new to you, you can't always know how it's going to be.
Yeah.
I had researched online, and there were mixed reviews. Some people said it was the best experience of their life. Other people said it was the worst and they almost died. People talking about purging, which at the time I didn't realize that the purging was kind of it's like cleaning you out of all of your
Right.
sickness. I mean, yeah, it was a very interesting time for sure.
So do you feel, I guess what comes up right now for me is like, how do you feel that that first experience, number one, do you feel that it healed parts of you? And if you could explain what parts it healed and what you felt like it did in the experience. And then how did it guide you to become more of a person to hold space for this plant now?
Yeah, yeah. So I think going into the ceremony, being at such a low point and dealing with suicidal thoughts for so long, I think I was really searching for something that was going to work. And I think grandmother knew that in a sense of kind of being that stern mother of like, okay, if this is what you want, I'm going to show you what this is. And so, in my viewpoint, I felt like part of me really did die on that bathroom floor, and like there was a lot of work done in that bathroom for those, 7 hours. And I came out of it and I don't remember the exact feelings that I had, but I knew that something was different and I felt better. I felt lighter. It was kind of like a clean slate, actually. It was very much like, okay, like what's next? I didn't leave thinking like I still wanted to, kill myself or end my life. I left and was like, okay, like now what? So after that, I ended up, I actually had moved to Florida the following week, which was really good timing, to move to a new location. And I was speaking with one of my new friends out there that had actually sat in the circle before. And I was explaining my experience and my feelings towards this medicine and what this medicine had done for me and how I felt. And she looks at me and she's like, it sounds like you want to dedicate your life to the medicine. And when she said that, I remember, I'll never forget it. We were sitting on the beach and my entire body just lit up. And it was like this light bulb went out of like something that I was trying to explain but didn't have the words for. And I went, huh, like, yeah. And at the time, I didn't ever see myself in the position of like serving the medicine. I thought more so of just like dedicating my life to sharing this medicine in whatever capacity that might look like. You know, even to me at that time, even to be in a position of emptying the puke buckets is like an honor to me. So I was very much like still in that like state of mind of like, there's no way that I would ever be able to serve medicine. Like that's not even on my radar. And then I was encouraged to speak with um the server that was in upstate New York. And I talked with her, and she had offered me to come and live in the space and to work and to help facilitate, to start essentially my studies. And it was when I lived in that house that I really kind of felt the confidence to pursue that and to be like, okay, like, yeah, actually, I could see myself maybe being in that position one day.
Yeah, that's fantastical. I mean, that is such a it's such a profound full circle situation. I'd like to without divulging too much because I know that it's really a personal story when people have an ayahuasca experience, but like can just for like the viewers, can you explain it, kind of like go through like what an ayahuasca experience is, like how many hours it is, like what kind of things happen during that process, and like just so people can kind of understand um that first time for you, and then the full circle of you actually like holding ceremonies now. Like I feel like people need to understand more in detail of what actually has happened to transform you, and if they can understand the inside out a little bit and understand what a ceremony is, maybe that
Mhm.
can help them understand how you got from A to Z, because that's quite
Yeah.
there's quite a lot in between, like from coming up from the depths of your shadow work to then suddenly having this, transformative experience. People have transformative experiences in all kinds of ways, near death, plant medicine, deep meditations. There's so many ways that people can get to this place, but this sacred plant that comes from another country is like is such a gatekeeper into
Mhm.
yourself, into each and
Mhm.
every one of our, our consciousness. And I want you to kind of like explain the experience of what it feels like, in the sense of like what actually happens in a ceremony.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things that's kind of hard to explain, but I will do my best. So, I guess for me, I spent the first, so I had moved to upstate New York to help facilitate, and we were, sitting pretty much every other weekend. So I got very well versed in the different kind of feelings that the plant would bring up. It's pretty typical to purge during ceremony, especially I think if you're new. For me personally, I feel like it was cleaning me out, and it took me, I want to say, close to maybe 3 or 4 years before I could have a ceremony where I wasn't purging. And again, that's very different for everybody. Some people don't puke at all. Some people are, puke all the time and purge. But for me, I felt like it really took me a long time before I could get myself to being in a position of kind of, doing all of this work, purging all of these demons out of myself, to get to the point where I'm more of like a hollow bone in order to hold that kind of space. But it's also different. There's different ceremonies all over the world, all different lineages. So you have, the Shipibo who they work in the dark. So if you're sitting with somebody that has the Shipibo lineage, it's going to be complete darkness, and they're probably going to be, hopefully, singing Ikaros to you, which are the beautiful, beautiful songs from the plants. And it's this amazing, amazing technology that they have, you know, channeled from the plants to help with the medicine working in your body. It's really kind of profound the way that she is able to pinpoint the different traumas you might have, or the different illnesses that might be in your body. She's grandmother is just so, so smart. So it's really kind of like this back and forth of working with her, and also giving her permission to enter you and to help show you and guide you the things that you need to work on. So yeah, it's different everywhere. It's really cool. One of the communities that I sit with now is Santo Dame, which is more of like Christ consciousness, which is, I personally, is probably my favorite to work with. Because we have the room kind of lit up and there's candles and you can see the altar, and beautiful, beautiful medicine music. And yeah, it's just such an experience. Such an experience.
So you touched on something that I don't think many people talk about, and when they're discussing grandmother experiences with this medicine, is you're talking about music therapy. So to me, these ancient portals of music seem to come through um, whoever the person is that is holding the ceremony, that is chosen for singing the music. So the music comes through, is channeled through this person that has worked with all of this for and connected to the lineages. So they have to have some teaching and understanding of the songs and the words, and the spirit that comes through that music. So what happens, if I can understand through your words, is that this music is going on in various points of, after the medicine has been digested and people have drank it, it's coming through, it's being played, and drumming as well, or different instruments are being used to kind of do a healing ceremony and touch through the energetic points of a person's human body, and kind of, shine light, because that's what music does. It's just another form of light. Shine light in all of the human body's, darkness or imbalances. And so with the permission and the person that's involved, that's sitting in this divine space, they're kind of in this very divine ceremony of releasing and allowing this energy and light through the music and through the plant to come through and, tweak each person on some sort of personal level, to wherever they're at, and whatever they allow to be open. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's kind of, I look at it as kind of like you know, a support. It's super supportive. And like I said, like especially with the Icaros, like it really is this amazing technology that is speaking directly to grandmother. And I went out to Peru for about a month. I was out there doing a dieta, which is just kind of being out in isolation in the Amazon and sitting with grandmother frequently. And the maestros out there are just out of this world, you know. And I remember them singing to me and pulling things out of my chest just with the Icaros. And so I think that was also a really big turning point for myself as well of being like, wow, I have a lot to learn before I feel
Humbling,
confident
huh?
to be there. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So humbling. I think I was on year three. Yeah, it was like my third year of my studies. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I have so far to go. But it was beautiful, you know, to see the power of these songs. Really, it was so powerful.
Yeah, and I feel like it's something important to touch upon. So
Mhm,
now that we're in this story on planet Earth, where everything is about, you know, technology and bringing in the new, and I don't have an aversion because it all comes through our consciousness. So as long as our consciousness is balanced and pure, we'll be all right. So I don't
mhm,
have any aversion to that, but I'm kind of tying this back into an idea of honoring the old and honoring the new. So the whole idea of this series is about honoring the goddesses of past and the goddesses of now, which is what you embody. And so when we talk about the plant medicine, I think it's really important to honor and to say that the traditions in the Amazon and the traditions that are given by those people are where it is the purest and the most derived from its ancestry. And I say this because I'm not putting down, you know, the Americanized version of this,
mhm,
because as you said, which you put it very beautifully at the beginning, you said you're so happy to see grandmother arrive here. And I have to say that I didn't have my first feelings weren't happy about that at the beginning. I have never sat with Aya in this lifetime, in this incarnation, but I am so close to it that I've already had the experience without ever ingesting it. Like I'm so close to that spirit that like I don't have
yeah,
to ingest it. Like I can be
sure.
around people that have used it and have the same understandings and feelings of it because that's how I work.
Mhm,
That's how my energy works. But
right.
what I wanted to say is it took me some time to get to a place of being okay and being understanding that there's something for everyone and every teacher and every experience. And even if I don't resonate with that for myself, like I wouldn't have an experience here in America in that way. I know for myself, I would go to the native land and I would go to the native people and I would go to people that have done it through lineages, through their father and their grandfather. And to me, I would always start from the purest place. But that's
Mm,
not to say, and that's not for me to diminish anything or anyone that is having another kind of experience that they took from that and then they diluted it into their own direction. And you know what,
mhm,
there's always something beautiful in every experience, and it all depends upon the perspective and where your consciousness is, what you're going to get out of that experience. It's not as much about the people as it is about where you're at. But I just
mhm,
want to take a second to honor those people in those regions because they, you know, they have it's part of who they, it's part of the thread of who they are. It's not a like a thing just about making money or giving, you know, Americans an experience. It's about where they come from, and it's just as much a part of them as the cells that are in their body and the air that they breathe. And it's really, really important for anyone that watches this video or anyone that has these experiences to understand how sacred these things are. And I say that because I have Indigenous in me, and I am very close to, I have done sweat, I have helped pour sweats, I have been a firekeeper of sweats. I understand what it is to touch into these realms that are part of existences that are timeless, that are here for
Mhm.
eternity, and they're tools that have been given to us that have to be respected and honored and understood for uh their transportations, they're portals. These things
Mhm.
are portals. And if you don't come into them with the right consciousness, there's very dangerous things that can happen for people and to people. And I'd like you to maybe touch upon that too, because I don't want people to have fear, but I want them to go into all this understanding that it's very serious business.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of what you were touching on of just mentioning that this is, such a big piece of their culture. And I think especially with like the Shipibo, the plants had shown them that this was going to happen, as in when I say this, I mean um grandmother coming to the US, grandmother coming to other pieces of the world to help heal the world, essentially. And so it was kind of like it's already been written in the stars type of thing. But um, I think as humans, we tend to extract a lot. And so I think that's part of what you had said, where you weren't necessarily happy to see it coming to the US and all of these places because there is a sense of extraction happening. And that's not even to say it's just with the Western, mindset. It's also with the cultures that it's coming from. And not every person is out there for money, but there are also a lot of Shipibo people recognizing that this is going to help them get to where they need to go. It's like it's really sad and it can be really dangerous. There have been a lot of different um, what's the word I'm looking for? Dangerous situations that have happened of people not necessarily vetting where they're going to, even in places in Peru. Which is why it's like you really have to really do your research and really trust who you're sitting with because you're essentially ingesting this plant and you're not necessarily going to be in control of your body. It's depending on the dosage and depending on where she takes you. It's really, really important to have facilitators that are vetted, that you trust, that have done the work to be where they are. Because if you don't, you're essentially just kind of on your own. And I've heard, not to do any kind of like fear mongering, but there are people that have been sexually assaulted during ceremonies. There's people that have been raped during ceremonies. It's very serious because it's kind of just, not regulated. So anybody can put up a post and say, hey, I'm a shaman, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that need healing on this planet that are, not to say that they're desperate, but they want like a quick fix, or they're not necessarily researching where they're going, or it's a cheaper option and that's all the money that they have. And so you get into kind of the situation where it's not something that's regulated and it's growing so fast, and
So
so
what
I
what
guess
would be what would be your advice if somebody is looking to have this experience and they want to have the best experience, the safest experience in the sense of finding the correct facilitator? Because I also feel too, and I've heard this in these, these conversation boards and these people that speak about ayahuasca. I've heard people say that there's definitely in this country and in the originating countries, there's shamans that are kind of work with the dark realms, and they don't necessarily express to you when you sign on the dotted line and give your money that you could be attacked. You could have a an
Mhm.
entity hitchhiker if you
Mhm.
have like tears and holes in your energetic merkaba. It could be a dangerous hitchhiker that comes along, or just one that gives you an experience that would traumatize you versus an experience that might be difficult but also learning, which is probably almost always how it goes. But I think that's something that people have to, like you said, do their research. But like, what would you say? How would you vet that out?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's dangerous because there is a lot of, we'll call it like bruja, all over the place. Even in the United States, I've heard of these disastrous places like in Florida. You just get into these different sketchy situations. So it can be kind of hard to, I guess, use discernment with something that you is new to you. You don't really know exactly what to look for, but I think the first thing that came to mind is like, don't Google ayahuasca ceremony and like pick the first link. It's funny, but it's not funny because people do, and they're like technology is great, but it's for me personally, I would suggest probably starting off with prayer, really sitting down and praying about it and asking, who you look to, whether that's God or a different, you know, entity that you work with or goddess. Really sit down and get clear about your intention and pray and ask the spirits, ask Great Spirit, like Great Spirit, I need you, please help me, show me where to go, show me what to do, and that's probably your best starting point, and then I would say maybe as in like finding a church because there are ayahuasca churches here in the US and finding indigenous elders. Um, those would probably be your best bet on maybe not necessarily being served by them, but them at least being able to point you in the right direction of who can, and that way you're finding communities that are based in truth and run by elders that, kind of know what they're doing. Yeah, that would be my.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems really important, and just maybe either going with people that are connected to your friends, or people that you actually know, or
Mm,
like finding people that have had the experience already, that with these groups, and then sitting down and speaking with them. But I like what you said, like praying. And I think something that needs to be understood now, at least in this actual moment of history that we're creating, or herstory, is is that right now we have like a cornucopia of energies and beings right now that are all around us, that some of us can see, and some of us can feel, and some of us that can hear. But there's still people on their journey that don't have those senses tapped on yet. But I would say to them is that prayer and meditation right now is literally, there's so many things available that want to guide your spirit, your particular spirit, that works with your vessel, your body. They want to actually help us and get us lined up with our golden thread of purpose. And it's
mm,
really, really important right now to take the time to rest, to take the time to go inward, and take the time to quiet the external noise, because the external noise is never going to end. It's always going to get louder and louder. And if you don't know how to go inward and realize that you are creating the external noise and that the external noise is operated by you, people are going to be going low key crazy because they're
Mm,
not understanding that all of this stuff that we created, politics, medicine, all of it, it is all coming undone because it doesn't work anymore, because our consciousness is evolving at such a rate that it's all coming down. And actually, it already has. We are just catching up to it. So, those of us that work in the ethers, like yourself and I, we actually are doing the work on the other side to usher in people to understand and accept what's really going on, because it's not there's no villains, there's no
yeah.
villains out there. It's all the villain within. And there's actually no villains within either. It's just the idea of understanding and loving our shadow to the point that we can honor it all the same. So we honor the shadow, we honor the light in equality, divine
Mm,
neutrality. And these are the points that are coming up for a sister like yourself, a goddess sister that works with plant medicine. This is part of your golden thread, is to educate and or hold your sisters and brothers, but right now sisters, because sisters are leading the way in this. Whether anybody wants to accept me saying that or not, I don't care. I don't care. This
mm.
is National Women's Day, and I'm keeping it real.
Hi.
I'm keeping it
It is
real.
national.
It's National Women's Day. And as I told you before we stepped on here, I literally didn't even realize that it was National Women's Day when we set this up, because me and you have tried to have this podcast episode for probably a couple of months now, and it just has
Yeah.
not worked out with our schedules because either yourself or I were just like, can't do it, can't do it.
Yep.
But my girlfriend, one of my girlfriends stopped over, and she's like, I told her all about this project, and she was like, Jill, do you know Saturday is National Women's Day? And I was like, oh my goodness, like, no, but thank you. Like, I literally started like jumping up and down. I was like, thank you, goddesses. Like, I knew you were
Yeah.
gonna like represent, like you were gonna put it on this special day. And so when I broadcast this, it'll be honoring our divine sisters, which the thing
Mm,
is, like, all of humanity is an equal importance, but you know, us women, we are creators, and we forget every day that we have creation between our legs that allows us to birth another being. That is no
mhm.
joke. That is
No.
the biggest responsibility on this, in this realm, is
Mhm.
being able to create like that. And then those of us that don't actually give birth, we create in so many other ways. And you holding space for the ancestors, and you know, in modern, you know, in diving into the modern realms, because you're younger and you can take both the new and the old and you can merge them to this beautiful blend. And that's what
Mm,
someone like myself and someone like you are doing together. We're taking
mhm.
the older pieces and the younger pieces, and we're taking what we need to create another fabric of existence. And it's really important as these gatekeepers and these portal holders, because that's what I see myself as a portal. I've actually been told I was a portal. I've been expressed that I am a portal. And so, you know what? If I am, and that's what it was part of my golden thread, then you know what? This portal that I'm creating with you right now is going to be something that's going to be very, very potent and powerful for other sisters, because they
Yeah.
need to see, you know, and feel our energy and our expression of what these things really are. And like, the medicine is profound, and I have never even tasted it, but I
Mhm.
understand what it means to the reality of humans. Like, these things
Mhm.
are going to be more important as time goes on, and as medicine changes, we're going to get to a place in the very near future, in the next 10 or 20 years, where we don't even, there's no health, we don't have health issues. We are
Hmm.
completely embodied humans, ascended masters, living out experiences where we manifest everything by thought instantly. And there's not even words anymore. It's complete telepathy. And we're already stepping into telepathy, but it's going to get really powerful and really
Hmm.
potent, and we're heading into those realities. So I can't even imagine what your life, how old are you, Akasha?
I'm 31.
Wow, you're in your 30s now. I didn't even
I
realize that.
am. Yeah, I'll be
Happy
32 next
30s.
month.
30s are powerful.
Yeah,
30s are
they
powerful.
are. They are. It's such a different frequency than my 20s. I mean, not only just because of working with plants and turning towards a more sober lifestyle, but just I feel like 30s are like where big things happen, Like I'm finally like stepping into it and I'm like, wow, looking back and seeing how every piece of my life leading up until this point, it's like everything happened as it should have happened. There was a reason for it, and all of the things that I learned over the past 15 years were just irreplaceable.
Do you feel kind of like you're in your second lifetime? Because I'm in my third lifetime here. Like I'm in this incarnation, I'm on my third lifetime. So I feel like
Yeah,
this is my third lifetime, and I would say you're probably in your second right now.
yeah, I would say second. Yeah, definitely. Because it's funny you say that because I was just telling my friend the other day, um, that I feel like my life is just starting. And
You're in
it's
your
like
you,
I'm
you've stepped into
31.
your
Yeah.
second, you're in your second lifetime. So you've
Hmm.
actually taken you've created a bunch of a huge amount of lifetime in a certain amount of years, because time is not real, and you've created enough of a stepping stone that you actually stepped into another lifetime of yours through your 30 portal. And
Hmm.
I'm in my third, and I stepped into that in my late 40s, stepping into my 50s. And so I can't even tell you like how much, like, literally the amount of experience I've had in 52 years is more than most people have had in two lifetimes, like two full lifetimes.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
just feel so grateful and blessed that I have a healthy vessel that I honor with everything that I have, my temple, and that I'm able to grow younger physically, but wiser in the ethers. Because the things that come through and that I work with, the angelic realms, I mean,
Hmm.
the angelic realms are now so prevalent that almost everyone has acknowledged and or honored the angels. But it wasn't like that when I first started. When I was in my 20s and I really started to work with them and really started to hold space and be initiated into their realms, it was not, people were like, oh, a guardian angel. That's all they understood. They did not understand that the angelics are the gatekeepers of this planet, that they are actually
Hmm.
just a couple of realms ahead of us. I mean, above us, in the sense of where they exist within this realm. And they are very, very extraordinary energies that have been assisting us. And without their assistance,
Sorry, my computer is gonna die. I need to plug it in really quickly.
oh, sure, sure, go right ahead.
Oh, I don't want to lose that thought though. It was good.
Well, I have to always hold a space for my angelic friends, because they have gifted me more things in those ethers than anything that I've ever dealt with in my whole existence. They have
Mm,
outweighed every human experience times 100 within my reality. And if I don't honor them and mention them, that I'm doing a disservice to my existence. Because
yeah.
at this point in time, I embody them more than I channel them. But when I first started, it was more of a channeling and a more of them talking to me. But now they're in me to such an extent that when they want to when they want me to do something, it's done. There's no
Yeah,
discernment or contemplation. It just becomes a reality.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, well, I am I'm so honored to have you on here. I don't know how much more time you have because I know you probably have to get, do you have a little bit more time? Because I know you, okay,
Yeah,
fantastic. I think what I'd love to step into with you is I would love to step into your idea of, this is a big one, your idea of what it's like to be balanced in both the 3D, 4D, you know, existence of reality of living in a job in the realm of assisting your fellow humans that aren't quite where you're at, and also holding the balance of being in the ethers with, you know, the ayahuasca and the plant medicine and the indigenous ceremonies. How do you, because I know I have my own ideas of this, but I'm really interested in how you hold the balance of all that right now, because it's a tricky
yeah,
time to do.
it's
It's a tricky, really uncomfortable and tricky time to be a way
yeah,
shower.
yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's very uncomfortable. Um, it's difficult, and I wish that I could say that I have like this layout, right? But it's it's difficult. I work for Suicide Lifeline right now for like my day job. And I enjoy it because I work from home as well. So it's, I think anybody that is in both realms, you know, it's difficult to kind of be out in the world. I spend a lot, I would say 95% of my time by myself. Whether that's in my house or out in the woods or whatever the case may be. I have found it very difficult to be out in the world because of the overwhelming energy that I feel from my surroundings, from people. You know, it's like even going to the grocery store, I've found has been more difficult for me lately because I walk in and it's I just see so deeply, right? And so I see people
Yes.
walk by and I see the sickness and I see the anger and you know, crazy things happen where people try to get into your uh bubble, let's say, like you know, they just pop up because it's kind of like moths to a flame in a way where
Oh
you're
yeah.
just
Oh yes.
embodying this light. And so the weirdest shit happens. And it's interesting, you know, but yeah, I personally find it difficult to balance. And I think anybody that is working in these kinds of fields understands that it's kind of like a dance. You know, it's kind of like a dance, but I spend a lot of time at my altar. I go to sweat every weekend, which I think the sweat lodge is something that really has not only kind of saved my life in a way, but like has helped me maintain the energy to continue with this work. You know, being able to have every Saturday to go and to cleanse and to pray and also be in community and be around other people that understand these energetics and they understand, you know, the space that needs to be held. So it feels really, really supportive to have that in my life right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that um those ceremonies are um are literally, you know, changing the fabric of our planet. Every single time we sit in a sweat lodge, an indigenous sweat lodge, and we sit with our brothers and sisters and we pray, because people don't understand. People that have never done a sweat lodge don't understand how powerful the prayer that happens. So people understand, you know, they put hot coals in there and you sweat, and they understand the physicality of like what happens, like, because you're letting go and you're releasing, toxins from your body physically. But I don't think people understand to the largest extent about how incredibly powerful it is to call upon your ancestors. And when you go into
Mhm.
a sweat lodge, you're not just sitting with 10 or 15 or 20 people, you're sitting with a billion entities that are conglomerating upon you and around you and within you, and literally transposing the energy of the land, the energy of the people, and then you're actually forever changed every time that you do one. Like, you come out a different human being than you came in, and
Mhm.
you sing, and you commune in a way that is been done for thousands of years. It's a divine right that we've been given, and it feels so honoring to be a part of it. And it's, for me, the last time I did a sweat was, because obviously, I'm in the Northeast, and we've had a pretty cold, snowy season. But I did do one. The last one I did was back in, I want to say it was October. It was pretty cold. And I was actually helping and a friend of mine. I was actually pouring with him, my indigenous friend Pete Yazzie. He was actually, invited me to help pour. And what I've done now that I never used to do is I stay in for every single round now. I don't come out at all. And so this last one
Mhm.
we did was so intense, and there was so much energy and so much purging that because when you're holding the ceremony and pouring, it's a different role, and so you're like taking on a lot of the energy of what's in that sweat, and you're like a gatekeeper. You're holding everyone together. You're holding the fabric of that connection together. So you're energetically holding everyone's hand, so to speak.
Mm.
And so what happened in that particular sweat is, and when I came out of it, I had an out of body experience in the last round, to where I came out of my body, and when I walked out, I completely passed out, and people had to catch me, and I don't have any recollection of passing out. So I literally went into a whole nother realm, and I didn't even realize I was gone until people
Mm.
grabbed me. Two different, a divine female and a divine masculine, grabbed me and lifted me up. And I guess I hit my head, and I didn't have one bruise. I didn't have one cut. I mean, I
Mm.
completely went down on the ground,
Mm.
but I was held by the ancestors. But I feel like what happened to me in that last sweat was such a huge initiation to the next level of myself, that it's even hard to even, and I've never even spoken about this. This is the first time that I've ever actually brought words to this experience. It was such a profound experience for me, and I felt completely different, like, as if I had a substance. Like, I was not the same. Like, I was not the same after this sweat. And I felt like I was initiated with my indigenous ancestors to be in a different role than I ever was going to be. And I didn't know before any of this that these things were going to happen. But when your heart is open, and like you said, the hollow bone, when you become the hollow bone in all of life, the most tremendous things can happen to you when you get out of your own way, and you're not about your person, your ego, your construct, your personality. When all those things begin to die, and they will for every single human that decides to stay in this
Mhm.
realm and evolve, it's you become every experience, you become every man, every woman, every child, and you get to experience things in a way that there is no judgment anymore. Judgment doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
And when you have those sweats every week and you're giving to that energy, you are giving to the portals that are bringing in the realms of the next level of humanity. So you are holding space for that, and you're choosing to spend your time doing this. And what a great volunteer job that is. So you're
Mhm.
volunteering in your private spiritual life, and you're volunteering in your day job, because holding space for victims of all kinds of things, all, through those phone calls, and being able to hold the energy, and use your energy to heal people, to know what they need to do next. Those are such powerful roles that you're playing,
Mhm.
and they need to be honored. And
Thank you.
that's your goddess thread. That's your
Yeah.
goddess thread, that all of the goddesses of all time, Athena, Venus, Isis, they're all coming through you, and you're an iteration of them. And there's nothing more powerful and more divine than you
Mm.
stepping up in your 30s like this, and showing your other sisters, both younger and older, that this is what you can do if you want to
Mm.
face yourself, if you want to look into the deepest caverns of your soul, in all the shadows, and you want to face those shadows. Look what you can turn out to be. You can turn out strong and vibrant, and lined up with your truth, like yourself. And it's so
Mm.
powerful. It's so powerful, and that's why I wanted you to come on here, is because you embody that. And I love your humbleness, but
Yeah, you're gonna make
it
me
is,
cry.
well, I'm speaking the truth about you. And me and you, when we met, I don't know if you remember, but when we first met,
I
you were
do.
getting you were getting stuff out of your vehicle, and I followed you. And I said to
Yeah.
you, I said, "Sister, I feel it's really important for me to tell you, you're on your path, and you're doing the right thing." Because I saw the turmoil and the turbulence that you were going to face.
Hmm.
I saw that, and I knew
Mm.
that it was going to be a little bit of a rocky road for you. But I also knew that it wasn't going to be harder than what you came from. For
Mm.
sure, it
Yeah.
wasn't going to be harder than that. It was going to be lighter. It was going to be a lighter journey, because you already had the
Mm.
tools. And that's one other thing I'd like for you to share with people, is now that you're on the other side of so much of that shadow, what would
Mm.
you say the most powerful, simplistic tools that you have used to this day that still work for you?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is something that I actually learned in my first ayahuasca ceremony, and that's to breathe, just your breath. Yeah, your breath. Oh my gosh. And people don't think about it, you know? And I think that that was the first thing that came through for me of not being able to breathe. And, you know, it's like in those moments when we're having a hard time, it's like that's all you need to do. That's it. And that's something that I tell people when I see them in ceremony, if they're like struggling, like back when I was helping facilitate, they would be having the worst time. And it was like, just breathe. That's all you have to do right now. That's it. That you have one job, and it's just to breathe. And that
That's
alone, yeah, that was a big
that
one. That was a
that's
big
so
one.
that is so powerful. Breath is so powerful. Like, I believe truly that breath is what we are. It's our spirit. Breath is our spirit. And if we learn to control it, and we learn to use it in the way it needs to be used, where we can center ourselves with 3 breaths, with just 3 breaths, deep breaths. We could recenter our whole entire body, all of our organs, everything that exists within us. We can
Yeah.
reset it. So that is thank you so much for speaking about that, because that is something that I've used, and I've spoken about that before. It's really, and there's so many different methods. I always used breath, but then I started refining it with the Wim Hof method, and I started using that method. And then I got interested in, like, all the cold plunging and all that stuff, and the cold water plunging and stuff, and the resetting of your body through water. And water to me, like besides breath, like I've been
Yeah.
drinking spring water that I've retrieved
Hmm.
myself for the over 15 years. That's the only water
Yeah.
I drink. And I think
Yeah.
to me, drinking, mineralized water directly from the earth is, to me, outside of breath, the second most important thing that you can do for yourself, because when you commune with natural spring water, you're communing with history. It's coming from the deepest vessels of the earth, which are ancient. And you're actually drinking the codes of ancient history every time you
Yeah.
put that inside your body.
Yeah, I agree with that. The water is the big thing. That's something that I actually just started doing this year was getting spring water. And it's a game changer. Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like such a different person now that and it's like the most important thing we have, right? Is like making sure that we're hydrated. And if you're hydrating with something that's not good for you, what's the point?
Well, and all the research that has been done scientifically, which for all the people that are scientific and, more use their logic, for anybody that watches this, there's been a tremendous amount of research. Dr. Emoto, is no longer with us, but he wrote books about how water has whatever emotion and whatever you're feeling, you can put into your water. And then Veda Austin, which is somebody I'm connected to, who I want to do a podcast with. She's done tremendous work with freezing water, and you can actually see, and I've actually did this. I actually worked with water and I froze it and I put an intention to water, and I actually saw the image of what my intention was in the water, and that's like the most groundbreaking of this moment of what's happening with water. She's a really special person that people should check out. And she has a book and she's been on a lot of podcasts and she's been around for a while. And she's like an iteration of Dr. Emoto, the female version. And she's amazing. So I challenge people to go out and research her and learn about her because she is powerful in her information on what she has done with water. And it was no accident that I found her, because when I found her, I was like, whoa. I was like, I've been working with my lake next to where I live for my entire life, and I've been doing things with water. And it's so nice now to see people actually giving the spotlight to the elements in ways
Mhm.
that have never been, and that's another thing that me and you understand is the power of the fire. So I've been a fire keeper, so I understand fire. I'm a Sagittarian. No, that's no accident either. I work with fire. And so fire, when you become one with the elements, they talk to you,
Mhm.
they speak to you, they give you knowledge and wisdom and tools. And when you do sweats, you become really intimately connected to the fire. And the fire is actually both protective, and it gets rid of and purges all the things in you that need to be, if you do it, if you bond with it correctly.
Hmm. Yeah. The I'm a triple Aries, so I totally feel that.
Yeah, triple
Yeah,
Aries.
my sun sign is a Taurus, but like the rest of my chart is pretty much Aries. So um yeah, just what came to mind with that of just like also like our inner fire, you know, which is something that has been a interesting balance for myself, as I think many women probably struggle with as well, of knowing when to contain our fire and when to just
Yeah.
let it out. And, trying to find the balance in that as well has been an interesting ride.
Yeah, and embracing your sacred sexuality, and not being afraid of it. I think so many women are either one way or the other. They're either, really closed off and afraid and scared because they've been, gone through, a sexual trauma, which almost, one in three women, probably three of three women at this point. I mean, I don't know the statistics, but women have been abused for so many hundreds of years that they don't understand and know how to get in balance in that. And I think as you spiritually evolve, you become more and more understanding of the balance of the feminine in that sexual way, to not be afraid of it, and to know that it can be a tool to evolve the planet. Like, you know, you can use sexuality with a divine partner and a divine love that, you know, takes the energy and is almost as creative as creating a child. You could just, with the energy of an orgasm, if you understand it and you really work with it. And I think that's another thing, you know, that I'll probably do a podcast on is sacred sexuality, because I know that I have a lot of like information and wisdom to share, but I've never wanted to go into that space, you know, for my own purpose. But I
Mhm.
definitely, you know, can stand beside other sisters and express, you know, the truth and wisdom that lies in that, because that's really, I'm sure that you're in a space now that really is, you know, has explored that in a way that could help humanity as well. I don't know if you want to touch upon any of that. We didn't talk about that in this, you know, podcast, but if you want to touch upon anything in that realm, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so much to say. There's so much to say about that. I think that's been, I guess, kind of the overview of my life, right? Of having a relationship when I was so young and the things that I went through with that person, of the sexual abuse that I went through with him was really tragic. And it was something that formed my entire viewpoint of sex from that point on, of, you know, like my body is not mine, and no doesn't mean no, and you know, men can do what they want and as they please. And so that followed me into the rest of my teenage years, into my 20s, where I started the sex work of dancing and kind of just embodying this like this succubus kind of energy, right? Where I really feel like that was kind of half of my soul at that point. I also refer to it as like a siren. I had somebody in my life recently that pointed it out to me. And that was something that I was able to transmute only 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, where I finally went head to head with that shadow aspect of myself, of this siren succubus energy of, you know, just really hating men in a way, of like all of these awful things that had happened to me, and having like a split down the middle of like this very innocent side of myself that was loving and compassionate, and then the other side of like just wanting to destroy because of all of the wrong that had been done to me. And so he had pointed it out, you know, the siren energy, and he could see it in me. And there was this really big turning point where it got really scary, to be honest, just to be completely transparent. I felt like I there were many nights where I felt that I was being tugged in both directions, where I had the dark on this side and the light on this side, and they were pulling me, you know, kind of fighting me back and forth of like, come this way. And then the darkness would be over here and be like, but if you come this way, this is what we're going to give you. And so to kind of be dealing with those energies of that back and forth, and at the same time, you know, I was going through a really difficult time of dealing with a lot of shame, so much shame, and being like, well, if this is how men are going to treat me, then like maybe this is my purpose of going to the darker side of, this is what they get, this is what they deserve. I'm going to embody the succubus siren energy, or going into the light and forgiveness and compassion. And I had to make a choice, and I'm not gonna lie, it was a really difficult choice to make, you know,
So
after.
so it was like you were literally like fighting with the distorted masculine and stepping into the divine feminine. And we have
Mhm.
all, like every single woman has had to face that in their existence. Every single one of us. And if they tell you that they haven't, they're not being truthful with you. So I
Yeah.
really want
Yeah.
to commend you for your vulnerability in that. I
Mhm.
too have had so many layers upon layers upon layers of having to walk through that and
Mm.
having to understand that you can enjoy sexuality without controlling somebody and without being controlled. And that's
Right.
there's so much to say about the surrender of each human in this, each counterpart, the masculine and the feminine. There's so much to say that when intimacy is really, really established, and this is something, believe it or not, at 52 years old, like I just went to the next level of this recently. And I was actually taught by a partner that I actually stepped into, and I'll be vulnerable about this. I stepped into a realm of, I posed for my partner that I did not want to be sexually intimate for 3 months. And I said,
Mhm.
I want to take 3 months and I want to dive into every form of intimacy outside of physicality that we can dive into. And this person actually was willing, and there's many reasons why they stepped into it. It wasn't that they were in such a grand place of sexuality. It wasn't about that. There was other reasons why, but they provided me the space. Either way, it doesn't matter. They provided me the space to be able to dive into the layers of intimacy that I never ever experienced to that depth, because I never afforded myself to wait to take a period of time that I dictated as a sovereign being and as a sovereign woman. I dictated, I want 3 months of no sexuality, not that there couldn't be any kissing or any kind of touch, but just not to go into that realm of giving myself in that way, the gift of my creation. I
Mhm.
made that, I put that boundary out in the relationship. It was kept. And I'll tell you, Akasha, allowed me to dive into some realms that I didn't even know existed. And I consider myself at a very high level of sexuality. I would consider myself at, a master's level, not quite PhD, but pretty much master's level to my existence, just from all my experience and all my diving into those realms. And it humbled me because I didn't realize how much depths of intimacy two people can share without sexuality. Because I think, like everyone, I had a distorted understanding of what intimacy was. And I qualified my intimacy on sexuality, which is insane and nonsense. But I think us speaking about this
Mhm.
in these platforms like we are right now allow people to understand there is so much more to intimacy than sexuality. And when you really take the
Mhm.
time to build the foundation of deep levels of intimacy, you literally can have, you know, next level out of body experiences. And I've had those without that, but I'm at a whole nother level. And because I created that boundary, I will always create that boundary. Every single experience on out, I will create that same boundary. And it's empowering as a female to do that. It's taking back your divine
Mhm.
power.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the 3 month rule is so huge. I remember I had a roommate when I was living down in Florida, and she explained just that to me, and I was like, I never thought of that, and it's so ingrained in us to kind of, I think, as women, to just give and give and give. And when we step into more of like that sacredness of like, I can give, but I don't have to give at the expense of myself. I don't have to give when I'm not ready. I can allow myself that period of time to really like feel into the person that I'm going to be sharing such a sacred thing with. I've gone through different kind of levels of celibacy throughout my life on and off as well, which is
Same.
like yeah, and it's just like it's so profound, like when you really connect to those pieces of yourself, really. And I love the 3 month rule. I think the 3 month rule is great because you can really tell who that person is after those 3 months. You know, it takes time to get to know somebody, and it takes time to not only that, but just to feel comfortable, you know? And so I think
Uh,
that's kind of what you were talking about, where you were like, you can unlock the different levels of intimacy because you're exploring everything else that can lead up to that. So when that happens, everything is included. It's not just the sex, it's the past 3 months of you guys getting to know each other on all levels so that all levels can be present in that moment.
well, and I think the becoming of friends and really, really establishing trust
Hmm.
is paramount to really having the deepest level of intimacy. And I think what's funny to me is when I talk to different people about this, before I did it, like when I embarked on it, you can't even imagine the sort of controversy, like how people would react. Like to me, like I think it was profound for some of my friends, and it really helped them. But I also I don't want to say that I got pushback, but I did get sort of from some of the older or non-understanding realms. I got kind of this like not understanding, like why,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like, well, almost as if it's like abnormal, as if it's like, and it actually should be normal. And it's
Hmm.
just funny how it's been reversed on us women, to where it's like almost just expected that when our partner is ready, we're supposed to be ready. And honestly, 9 times out of 10, we're not. And we
Hmm.
actually go along with it, which is a form of abuse in a way, because if a man feels that you're not ready and he still does it, that's still crossing a boundary, even if it's consensual in the sense of you not stopping it. Now we're dealing with different realms now, which I've always dealt with, but now people are starting to tap into all the feeling bodies and all the levels of, you know the senses that we don't talk, that we haven't talked about. People are now diving into them now, but like if you even are a kind of awake and kind of conscious, you understand that there is realms that say no, that are very clear in your energy. It's not necessarily your words or what you're saying with your face, but your energy can very, very much say no. And it's a responsibility of any person that is going to penetrate you to understand and recognize those cues within you. And if they're not adept and you're not close enough for them
Hmm.
to recognize and play with those cues, then honestly, there's no business to those things to happen.
Right. Yeah. And I think what that comes down to is just really good communication as well. And like you said, getting to know that person so that they can recognize, your cues, or even just going like something super simple of like setting down boundaries beforehand, explaining what your no's are, like having all of these kinds of
Yeah,
conversations before ever even getting in that position is so important because, like you said, if not, things can be completely misread. Abuse can happen when one party doesn't even realize what they're doing is necessarily wrong because they don't know you in that way. And so it's both parties, right? Where it's like you kind of just get into
exactly.
the shitty situation and it doesn't have to be like that.
No, and I think, like you said, communication is really, really powerful, but you really can't communicate with a person in a week or a day or even a month. Like, yeah,
Right.
you can communicate with them, but the depths of communication that needs to be felt, the uncomfortable conversations have to happen, of, like you said, the no's and the yeses. And women's
Hmm.
no's have to be respected. They have to
Yeah.
be honored and not pushed and not crossed
Hmm.
over, because there's also the idea that, like, once you're in an established relationship or marriage or whatever level of commitment you have, there has been the understanding, or non-understanding, I should say, of, well, because you're mine or because we're committed, should happen when I want it to, meaning
Hmm.
not both parties. And that's
Mhm.
also not, that's not honoring. That's not
Right.
honoring of each other.
Yeah.
There's so many layers to this
Mhm.
that should be explored. And honestly, so many people, man and women, and I've learned more about men's traumas in the last few years than I ever had learned. Like I knew that it existed, but like I've gotten a lot more deeper into it because I do a lot of work with a lot of people, and a lot of people come to me and they want emotional support, and people are very vulnerable with me, and they tell me things that they won't tell any other humans. And I've learned about sexual trauma on the men's end too,
Mhm.
and they have a lot of traumas and they're very triggered, and they do things and act out things that have been done to them. And they don't
Yeah.
do it in a way that wants to hurt someone. They do it in a way that that's all they know. And
Yeah.
sometimes pain is pleasure, and sometimes hate is love to people. And like that's something that's very foreign to me, but it's been a concept that I had to understand and recognize because
Yeah.
I come from my own vessel of understanding. And if I haven't experienced that, I need to learn about it. If I want to really assist people in the ways that I am assisting them, I have to dive into all those realms, and they can be
Mhm.
very scary. Those shadow realms can be very, very scary.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, I got a little bit of taste with that, with the sirens, with man, the because it's tempting, right? Like those darker realms sometimes, because I think the darker realms, that's why people get so lost in them. They're heavy and they're potent, and it's easy to kind of just get swept up into it. And I think overall it's like hurt people, and we've spent a lot of time understanding that men are hurting women, but we're not really looking at the men's side of things either. And that's something that has come through very profoundly for me just recently, I think, because I was finally able to start holding that, and just working through all of my own traumas with men, and recognizing that they also have all their own traumas as well. So it's been really profound to see their side of things as well.
Yeah, and the trauma bonding and the understanding that without one you can't have the other. Like so all the women that are like men are the problem are not understanding that we are the problem too. And it's not even a problem. We're all healing and we're all
Yeah.
learning and we're all doing our best to balance out and understand what makes us do the things that we do. And you really can't step into any realms of divine neutrality if you don't look at everything equally. Like you can't
Hmm.
you are the victim and villain always. There's no
Hmm.
separation of those two. And the darkness and the light, there's no separation of those two. They're two sides of a coin, and you have to honor both sides because you would never be able to get the light unless you could understand the contrast of darkness. And so
Hmm.
for me, I think it took me many years to understand because I went through a huge, huge dive in shadows, when I was with my daughter's father 26 years ago. And I went through the most, most tremendously painful year of my life when I was 25 years old. And I kind of pushed away the shadow after that. I was like, all right, I'm done. I did that, got the t-shirt, the bumper sticker. I'm accomplished. I don't need any more. And then in recent times, whenever you're going to step up to the next level of yourself, which we're all stepping into the next levels of ourselves right now, as soon as you get to that precipice and you're ready to go on to, you're going to be tested in everything you learn. So it's like, okay, like it's like you all the way from kindergarten all the way up to your PhD level. When you get to that PhD threshold, you're going to have to go back through every single lesson all over again. And some of them you'll breeze through and you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then some of them they're like, oh my God, I got to go through a whole nother experience, and I got to, like, there's something I missed. Like I
Hmm.
didn't learn that about the shadow. And I recently went through some of that. Like I recently went through a very deep dive into some very deep dark shadows of understanding of like realms that I thought that I knew and understood, and then seeing so much of the light and beauty in them in ways that I had thought never existed. And I had to go into them with my heart open, and I had to go into them seeing them as divine. Because as soon as you get
Mm,
into judgment, and as soon as
yep.
you point your finger, that finger points back at you. That means
Hmm.
you have more work to be done. If you put your nose up to anything or anyone, you have more work that needs to be done.
Hmm. The divine mirrors. The
Yeah,
divine
and
mirrors.
and and yes, I think the very hardest thing to come to is understanding the difference between boundaries and avoidance. It's one
Oh,
thing.
say it, sister. Say it. Uh,
It's one thing to create a boundary and to not let somebody be a succubus, but it's another
hmm.
thing to avoid the lesson and the story. Because you know
Hmm.
what? The story and the lesson has to come through. You have to experience it. And it has to be visceral. I'm sorry. It has to be
Yeah.
visceral.
Yeah.
And if you avoid that visceral experience, you will
Just
you
comes
will
back
not you will
anyway.
not you will not travel to the next realm of yourself.
Yeah, it's kind of like you just stay stuck in that one spot and you're kind of just in this loop and you're just going to continue in the loop because the lesson's just going to keep coming. Yeah, it's sad because I know some people that are in those loops and I've been in those loops myself, so it's difficult. But once you bring awareness to it, it's like kind of the catalyst to get out of it.
Yeah, because people that are in deep darkness like believe that's their light, like they believe that that's their truth. And so even expressing and explaining and teaching and helping people in their darkness is like the way I frame it and the way I see it is like it's not that you're wrong, it's that there's something else and you can experience everything. It's not
Yeah,
that you have to shun this piece, it's that you can expand out of that piece and evolve out of it. And
right.
you really can't understand the shadow without having the light. You can't.
Hmm.
I think part of my golden thread is to be able to share my light everywhere, in the darkness and in the light, and
Hmm.
in all the different grays and in betweens, and be able to see that gray as beautiful and that black as beautiful and that light as beautiful, but also express to each of those levels that there's something else, there's more.
Yeah, that's the part, right? There's more. There's more. Because it's so hard to see that when you're in the thick of it, but once you reach that other side, you're just like, oh wow, okay, I see it now, which is really beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the part of me that continues to want to serve has to always remind myself if you really want to be in this divine thread through your throat chakra, through a podcast, through speaking, you really need to be able to hold space for everything. And if you don't, then you're failing yourself. You're failing humanity, you're failing truth, you're failing justice, you're failing balance, because all those things work in the reality of seeing everything. And so like if I'm really in my eagle, because eagle is my totem, if I'm really in my eagle, I'm seeing everything. I'm not just seeing the small, I'm seeing the large. So I can
Mm-hmm.
be the small because I chose to come here and be a human. So I'm being the small, but I'm also the eagle. I'm also the very, very large, expanded out version of reality. And I can oscillate between the small and the large. And I'm getting better and better and better at being able to do this. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been tested in the last 6 months to really, really be able to go back and forth and assist humanity while I'm doing it. And it's
Mm,
tricky. It's very, very tricky because when you feel everything and all these new abilities get turned on and you're expected, what people don't realize is when you have more spidey skills, the
mm,
responsibility on your back is so tremendous. It's like Maya Angelou, know better, do
mm,
better. Once you have the capabilities to understand and take on the responsibility, you don't ever let it go. It doesn't go to sleep.
mhm.
You don't have a vacation. It is
Right. Yeah.
continuous. I just got told by somebody that I'm close to, take a vacation. Can't you just take a week off from all this? And I was like,
Yeah.
that's not how it works. You think the
No, you
angels
can't.
get a vacation? You think the ancestors get a vacation? They're working every second of every moment to assist in the
Mhm.
evolution of humanity. I'm no different. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a very limited, finite time in this body, so I can't express myself in this body forever. But my expression, what is created, can't be destroyed.
Mm,
Everything that is created in love and everything that exists can never be destroyed. So when people
mhm,
talk about losing loves or, being brokenhearted, it's like that which you created is never destroyed. That love that you experienced exists in all of existence. It's in
mhm.
the Akashic records of all of existence. It can
Yeah.
never be stamped out, burnt out, taken away, destroyed. It is always honored by all the realms and all the realities and all the universes because that's
Mhm,
something that we do here that no other realm does. Is
mm,
we know what romantic and unconditional love is. And
mhm,
no other realms experience that. And that's part of
mhm.
that contrast that we get to explore, the heartache and the love of it all.
Yeah, the duality of everything. Like you said, without the darkness, you can't have the light and vice versa. So without, the love, you can't have the heartbreak as well. Mm.
And honestly honoring the heartbreak and
Mm-hmm.
not crying behind closed doors, crying in front of each other. I have had so many people cry in my podcasts, not because
Yeah,
I wanted them to cry, but because they experience all the emotions, because they go
yeah,
into the depths of themselves and they see and feel things about themselves that they feel obligated to release in that moment. And I always feel super honored because I'm like, we really have to stop pretending that we're one dimensional. We
right.
pretend we don't even exist. We don't even honor the 3D. We like want to be this image on a screen. It's like it's not
Mm,
real. Yeah,
yeah.
we have these beautiful vessels that we can honor, but we're not the vessels.
Mm. Yeah, that's really beautiful. And what came to mind for me was the saying that tears are the highest form of prayer. And
Yes.
I love crying. Anybody that knows me knows that I am such a crier. I'll cry all the time. And I was not always like that. There was definitely a period of time where I really held it in. And I think that was part of what the plants also gave me was like the freedom to just express myself in all different kinds of ways. And I think crying and like, shedding tears is one of those ways. It's been really, really like a beautiful process because if you're not crying and releasing all these things, then they just get stored in the body, and that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, what we energetically hold is what creates disease. And,
Hmm.
we're so external about chopping it out that we don't understand that it's an inside job. And I think both yourself and I understand that, and we do our best with our own bodies and with expressing that externally to humans because, it's you can't no one is going to fix you or save you. You have to
Oh.
you have to fix and love yourself.
Hmm.
And that also goes on to the conversation into the realms of relationshiping. It's like in relationships, you're not going to find what you're missing in yourself. Like
Right.
never. Like you are never going to complete yourself or find yourself in another person. You can explore mirror work with another person, and you can
Mhm.
have them show you things that you don't want to see. Like that's perfectly wonderful, but they're not going to fill you. You have to fill you. And you can't really have a really symbiotic relationship with another human until you do that. I mean,
Right.
you can have experiences and you can learn lessons and you can do work, but you're never going to have a divine partnership until you're divine.
Right. Yeah, like that divine union inside of yourself so that you can find it in another. Yeah, as within, so without.
Yeah, it's it's a lifelong journey for most of us. It's or if you I mean some people do the work young and some people do the work old and some people don't do the work at all. And
Yeah,
fortunately or unfortunately, those that have done the work are there to assist the others that haven't. And
true.
it's the ultimate service work is to
Hmm.
and it's not about just expressing. So my balance that I'm always looking for is like being by teaching by example, because I love to do these podcasts and I love to share and I love to use my throat chakra, and I know that it's definitely a golden thread for me, and I've been expressed that from all different humans and non-humans that I'm supposed to do this. Like I was guided over a year ago to have this podcast, and I didn't want to be in the limelight. I didn't want to be in the forefront, even though people think,
Right.
"Oh, your energy, you're like perfect for this. Like you love to talk and you're great with people and you have a lot to give and blah blah blah." It's like, yeah, but like I work better in the background. Like I work better
Yeah.
one on one, where I go to a gathering, I go to an event, and the right person, I'm guided to talk to and speak with and usher into the next version themselves. But now the universe is like, I want you to go and do this, be in the forefront of this, and I want you to be a holding tank and a portal for other humans and hold a space for
Hmm.
them. But there's also like, this is where the balance needs to be. Like there needs to be a balance between, expressing words and communication and and also the leading by example, because if you don't embody what you say, it means nothing. And I don't mean that like it's worthless, because words are not worthless, they're powerful. But if I'm going to sit here and talk to you and I'm going to talk at you about things that I supposedly know or feel, I better have embodied them.
Hmm.
Otherwise, they're not going to be translated as a truth, and they're not going to be honored and respected, and they're not going to help anyone. Like
Yeah.
maybe they'll help someone, but like it's I'm not going to reach the largest amount of humans if I'm not embodying what I'm saying to you.
Yeah, it's like the energetics that go along with that, it's not going to land in the way that maybe you mean to, or it's not going to land in a way that's going to bring up those shifts for other people. If you're not embodying what you're saying, people can feel that.
And
Most people can.
you know yourself that it's a day-to-day grind. Like it's literally like
Hmm.
I work in a place with hundreds of people, and I literally am impacting each one in my own way every single day. And I
Yeah.
take on that responsibility. I take on that seriousness. I don't look at it like, oh, I'm doing here to do a job. I look at it like I am a holding tank for all these humans, and it's my responsibility to make them better from my energy and my expression. And if I don't leave people better than I find them, then I failed myself. And I take that extremely seriously. And when I say that to people, I don't think they really feel it, but I think they know that I'm talking from my heart and they believe me, because that's how I
Hmm.
exist. And if I don't exist in that way, then I'm not doing my job.
Right. Yeah, you just feel like this is, the path, and I mean, I can speak for myself, but I'm sure that you can resonate with this of like it just feels like the right thing to do, where it's like we didn't necessarily like seek these paths out or these
No.
responsibilities out. It was more so like it landed and we were like, well, that's the right thing to do, so I'm gonna do it. And that's kind of just where I'm at with it, of just going with the flow, and seeing
Well,
how
and
it
also
goes.
there's also a whole nother conversation which will take a whole nother podcast, but I'm just going to bring it up because I feel like it's really pertinent is we have hundreds of versions of ourselves that we've existed
Mhm,
in as different, in my opinion, is different incarnations, okay? if if and when we're really turned on and tuned in, we can tap into any of those versions of ourselves and we can quantum jump and bring them into whatever reality we want at any moment. And when we
mhm,
really get good at this, we become everything. And so what
mhm,
happens is we can be the psychiatrist, the nurse, the
mhm.
counselor, the doctor,
The
the,
mother.
all the things without living them in this personality, in this embodiment. And like I think for myself, that's why I have the capabilities to make people feel that they can tell me anything, because they literally feel my multidimensionality. They literally
Mhm,
feel the safety of all of who I am. When
mhm,
I communicate with them, they understand that I'm dealing with all kinds of things that's assisting them in that moment. I'm not just
mhm,
the little Jill Butler and the little Jill Butler experience. I'm like the
mhm,
vastness universe opening up through this portal of Jill and giving whatever somebody needs in that moment what they need. And I think people
mhm,
actually, on some weird level, feel that. They don't understand it unless they might have some awokenness. But if they're not,
mhm.
they just trust. I mean, I've had people tell me things that could get them in serious trouble. You know what I
Right.
mean? And not like after I've known them for like years, after I've known them for days or weeks. Like, and that's like
Mhm,
I take that as a responsibility. Like that's a
mhm.
responsibility that I have to work with that with people in those ways. And you don't have to have a degree. You don't have to have anything. Like that's something that we've been taught that we need to be untaught.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And they can sense it, you know. I think people can sense when somebody is safe for the most part.
Yeah, yeah, and that's discernment, and that's a word that
Right.
you used at the beginning of our of the podcast is
Mhm.
understanding. Discernment is really like listening, and you and I both know too that I'm sure we failed millions of times about using our discernment and our intuition. We knew something, we felt something, and we did what we wanted to do,
Yeah.
and
All the
boy did
time.
we feel it after. Boy did we
Oh
feel
my gosh. Yes.
we said, "Oh shoot, I think
Yeah.
I should have listened to what I was supposed to do." And then when you start dealing with all these beings and entities in other realms, and they start talking to you, and you don't listen to them, oh boy,
Yeah, the backlash.
then you really feel like a child. Then you feel like this little
Mhm.
kindergartner that's like needs to go back to school, and it's
Right.
very humbling. It's very humbling.
Yeah, I can definitely be a brat sometimes and don't want to listen to my guides. And then they're like, girl, you know, but on that note, I do have to get going and I just want to thank you so much for having me on here. I don't want to be late to Sweat Lodge, so I do have
Oh
to go.
no, you gotta go. You gotta go. No,
Yeah.
and honestly, like I'm gonna continue this series, and maybe I can have you back on again if you'd like.
Yeah, I would love that. That would be great.
Well, I hope you have a fantastic sweat,
Thank
and
you.
I will be with you in spirit.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I love you, sister. Take care of
Thank
yourself.
you. Of course. Likewise.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.